Marvel Studios seems to have a really good plan for Avengers 5, and we just got a ton of new information about the film. We've gotten a lot of information over the past few days as well. Some people were kind of worried hearing some of the things that might happen in Avengers 5, but now things are really starting to shape up, and it looks like the plan that Marvel Studios has is kind of really starting to come together, and fans are starting to see that, and they're starting to get very excited for what's to come. Today we have a lot of new reports to go over, including a report that states Loki and Sylvie are going to be involved in Avengers 5, which of course we'll talk about. And I really think Avengers 5, based off of what we've heard, is about to solve a problem that a lot of fans have kind of complained about. I've seen this complaint a lot on my YouTube, on my Instagram, on my Facebook. I see people not necessarily complain, but state the fact that there hasn't been too much multiverse connections with what we've really seen in the MCU since Phase 4. Yes, we've had Loki, and that was pretty much as deep as we went with Loki Season 1 and Loki Season 2. Yes, Multiverse of Madness did have the multiverse in it, but it was more of a teaser. It wasn't too deep into what is really happening in the overall multiverse saga. Same thing with Quantumania. It was kind of a tease of Kang, who we're hearing is not going to be the only villain. We have news about that today, which we'll go over, but the main, I'll just call it a complaint that I've seen, is that there really isn't that much connectivity, not necessarily between projects, but just with the multiverse in general, and it looks like Avengers 5 is going to fix that. Plus, Deadpool and Wolverine, I think, is really going to help fix that as well. But we've recently heard from Deadline that Avengers 5 is going to be a multiversal film, and it's going to have over 60 characters in the film. Now, that sounds insane and really exciting, but some people are stating that that might be too much. But I think Marvel is going to handle it really well, especially after what Alex P from the Cosmic Circus recently said in a Discord Q&A. This is what he stated. What I can say is that I'm hearing that Avengers 5 will be a multiversal film with a particularly grounded story involving multiversal elements. So the story is still going to be a relatively grounded story, but it does honestly need to have multiverse elements because they do need to start to set up the collapse of the entire multiverse. That is really one of the major threats that is supposed to be happening in Avengers 5 and Avengers Secret Wars. Mainly in Avengers Secret Wars, but if they don't start setting that up in Avengers 5, then it might feel pretty rushed in Secret Wars, which might actually be a two-part movie, which we'll talk about in just a bit, because we got more news on that today. But going back to Avengers 5 still being a grounded film, I think that is pretty good, especially since we aren't really going to have a set Avengers team. They're going to kind of start to come together in Captain America, Brave New World, and maybe some other films as well. But the whole kind of Avengers Assemble moment, not necessarily the one that we got in Avengers Endgame, but the ones that we've gotten in previous Avengers films, like the very first one in the Battle of New York scene where it shows them all together, Avengers Age of Ultron where it shows them in the wooded area, and then at the end with all of them fighting the Ultron bots. We're talking those type of Avengers Assemble scenes, not necessarily somebody yelling or whispering it. But the Avengers team is going to start to come together, and it sounds like a lot of other teams are going to start to get involved in what is happening with the entire multiverse, which apparently and reportedly is going to involve Loki and Sylvie. Another thing that Alex Perez talked about in the Q&A was Loki and Sylvie in Avengers 5 and just their future overall. Something that a lot of people have been wondering about since the end of Loki Season 2. Loki now is essentially holding the multiverse together. So the question is, can he leave? Is it possible for him to actually go into a timeline? Or does he physically have to stay there outside of time, outside of space, holding the entire multiverse together? That is what most people believe. But here's the thing, we're in the Multiverse Saga, and if things go like the Secret Wars event did in the comics, the entire multiverse will be destroyed. So if that were to happen in the MCU, that would mean Loki could leave because there is no multiverse for him to hold together. That would also get him very heavily involved in the events that are going down. So Alex P says that Loki and Sylvie are currently going to play a role in the upcoming Avengers films, plural. That's an idea that's definitely going to come to fruition. So pause right here in the middle of this report about the two of them. To put this in simplistic terms, Marvel Studios does plan to include them in the upcoming films. They haven't necessarily written out everything that they're going to do from now until Avengers Secret Wars yet. That's why he says that's an idea that is going to come to fruition. He continues and states, as for how big their roles might be, it wouldn't be wise for me to say how big their roles are since these things always vary in pre-production, production and then post-production. So basically what he is stating here is that he has heard some things about the next Avengers film for Loki and Sylvie, but it's pre-production right now. Things can always change. And things have already pretty drastically changed for Avengers 5 since we've gotten different writers and since we had the whole ordeal with Jonathan Majors happen. The script was originally being written by Jeff Loveness and was not going to be this big of a film, but it's now being written by Michael Waldron, who wrote Loki Season 1 and Multiverse of Madness, and he's also writing Avengers Secret Wars, which I like because I believe this will increase the continuity between the two films. And I'm guessing that Loki probably wasn't too involved with the original script for Avengers 5 since it was going to be more of a grounded film overall and not have 60 plus characters. But now that it is going to tie into the multiverse more, it just makes sense to have Loki in there and Sylvie as well. In fact, I'm thinking that Sylvie might kind of act on behalf of Loki. Since Loki can't really leave at the moment, he might choose to communicate with Sylvie, then Sylvie will kind of execute everything that needs to happen for the multiverse, for Loki, for everybody good at least. Because now that the TVA's main job is to essentially hunt down Kang the Conqueror variants in the entire multiverse, it wouldn't make sense to have Loki, Sylvie, the TVA not be a part of Avengers 5 if it is going to be this big multiversal film. But this is what Avengers 5 is going to be. We have the report from Deadline, we now have the report from Alex Perez from the Cosmic Circus, and even Jeff Snyder has recently confirmed this as well. Yesterday, he stated on the Hot Mic podcast, his podcast, that he has also heard that 65 characters will appear in the next film. And we're going to do a video soon about which characters are going to be those 65 characters that show up in the film. So be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss that video. But this is another insider along with Alex Perez, who both have very reputable track records and reputations and are right about a lot. That combined with Deadline's report, and Deadline is pretty much as big as they get, this is for sure going to happen in Avengers 5. So brace yourself for over 60 characters, apparently 65 characters. But like I said, this might be so much that Avengers Secret Wars has to be split into 2 different movies. Now, I've talked about this recently, but it was just my own opinion. We now have a report from a reputable insider, again, Alex Perez from the Cosmic Circus, and he states, "One thing I even heard through the grapevine was the idea of having more than one central antagonist. So, yes, I think the films Avengers Secret Wars will be split." So basically, there's going to be so much happening, and it does sound that way, that Avengers Secret Wars is going to need 2 films, a part 1 and a part 2. And I'm here for this. I think they should do that rather than cramming everything into one film. I think they should take their time, separate it into 2.5, 3-hour films, whatever it needs to be, but you all have heard me say that before. But Alex also states that he has heard there are going to be 2 antagonists for Secret Wars. We have only heard that there are going to be 2 antagonists for Avengers 5 up until this point. So I really like this idea. Now, obviously, Kang is going to be one of the antagonists, and as far as who the other one might be, we haven't really heard of anybody, but I think it could be one of 2 people. One could be the Beyonder, because that just makes sense from Avengers Secret Wars, the story in the comics, and 2, Doctor Doom, which also makes sense for the exact same reasons that the Beyonder makes sense. Now, we've heard Doctor Doom is going to be entering the MCU with the Fantastic Four film. What we've heard is it's not going to be anything super major, but they're going to tease him, and simply having him on screen, just as Victor Von Doom, is going to be insane. But it sounds like they might be saving him for the next saga, which I'm okay with. He deserves more time than this. He shouldn't become a big bad just all of a sudden. But the Beyonder, that makes sense, especially because not really anybody knows about the Beyonder. The Avengers and the villains and the Fantastic Four and all of the X-Men, everybody basically finds out who the Beyonder is all together at one point in time when he takes them all from their realities and puts them all on 2 different spaceships, essentially. Then he says, hey, fight each other, and whoever wins, whoever is the last one standing, essentially, I'll give you whatever you want. I'll make all your dreams come true. Nothing you dream of is impossible for me to accomplish. And here's the thing, in the comics, Kang is on one of those spaceships. He's with the villains. The Beyonder has power beyond anybody we've seen, including Kang. And originally we heard that there was going to be a Kang Beyonder variant of some sort, but given everything that's happened with Jonathan Majors, perhaps they're simply going to make the Beyonder a villain of his own. And maybe they'll say that he's behind the multiverse essentially disappearing, just like in the comics. But go ahead and let me know what you think in the comments down below. Who do you think the other antagonist is going to be for Avengers Secret Wars? Please don't forget to like the video and subscribe so you can stay up to date on all the latest Marvel news. Check out our pinned comment for the giveaway info plus other information. And as always, thank you all so much for watching. Woof woof.